This program was made possible by Wings Over the Rockies, educating and inspiring all people about aviation and space endeavors of the past, present, and the future. Hi, I'm Sean Sederberg, and this is Behind the Wings. In this episode, we'll explore the challenges posed by wildfires and the role of aviation in fighting fires from the skies.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Fire aviation teams are critical, complex efforts made up of pilots, technicians, coordinators, and ground crew who work together to put out and contain wildfires. In this episode, we'll speak with the pilots to learn what aviation firefighting is and how it works. Then, we'll explore the aircraft themselves to learn more about the modifications and the technical aspects that enable these planes and helicopters to operate in firefighting missions. And finally, we'll meet some of the many community members who were so drastically affected by the historic 2020 Colorado fire season. It's time to go behind the wings.
My name's Claire Waldock, and I'm a crew chief here at CalFire Aviation. Today is our first week of company training, 2021, and we're out here in Fort Morgan, Colorado. So to get ready for the fire season, we've got our airplanes here, and we do our annuals, our 100 hours. We get our trucks and trailers ready, get those all fixed up. We just make sure that our equipment is in tip-top shape and ready for a full fire season. CalFire is a big family. You know, the fire aviation world, it can be a dangerous thing to do, so everybody comes together and makes sure everything is safe and done correctly, properly. CalFire has a support crew, and the drivers that drive the support vehicles is kind of like a mobile base. So we have the ability to mix retardant on our trailers and load it onto the airplanes. So essentially, if we get stationed for a fire where there's no resources, we're able to support from the ground and help out with that fire. So we've got everything available. We get there in the morning about 9 o'clock typically, and the pilots will do their walk around the airplane, and we are on duty from then on. We wait for a fire call, but when it's time to go, we're ready, and we've already done all our prep work. Our load is mixed, if that's the case, and we're loading off of that base, and then everybody, it's go time. Us as drivers, we can help those guys on the ground, because they're the real heroes. Our pilots can help those guys on the ground because they put themselves in a very dangerous situation to protect structures and homes and the forest. And it's really special to know that we can help a little bit by mixing that load and getting those pilots off the ground safely and getting them to the fire on time and back home to see their families. It's a really cool world to be a part of.
One of the things we're learning is that fire season is no longer a fire season. Fire season is a year-round thing, and we have fires burning at a rate that we've never seen before. To understand the scope of wildfires today, we need to understand how climate change and the environment impact fire systems. We're going to talk to Dr. Russ Schumacher, Colorado's state climatologist, to learn more.
My name is Russ Schumacher. I am the state climatologist for Colorado, and we are here on the official Fort Collins weather station. The weather station has been here at CSU since the late 1800s. Wildfires, it's always a complicated issue because there's so many factors involved. The health of the forest itself, whether people are living in that area that might be impacted. But certainly the weather and climate aspects play a big part in setting that up. The big fire years that we've had in Colorado since 2000 or so have tended to come in the hot, dry summers, the big drought years. The folks who kind of study wildfires, I think, are just seeing new things that haven't really been observed before. They focus on three things when it comes to weather. It's hot, dry, and windy. And we saw that on so many days in 2020 where it was hot and dry and windy, and the fuels had dried out from kind of a longer period of it being hot and dry. How the fires behave, the fires creating their own weather, having a big wildfire set within a day that's quite windy That makes the fire take off on its own, but then within the fire itself, you see vortices, kind of like tornadoes within the fire. Since the turn of the 21st century, here in Colorado and many places in the West, we've seen this increase in acreage burned from wildfires, and that's what climate models and other analyses have been pointing to. We had these huge fires burning in a time period when that's never really happened before. The fires of 2020, it really was very eye-opening. The warming up and drying out of the forests that we've seen in the last 20 years or so, and then these big fires. Climate change is playing a role in that. It's not the only thing that causes that, but it sets up these conditions for this explosive kind of fire year that we saw last year.
Issues like wildfires need to be approached from every angle. Ground crews, aviation teams, and even lawmakers come together to invest in resources and infrastructure needed to face the new reality of wildfires today.
I'm Senator Bob Rankin. I represent 7 counties in northwest Colorado, and 4 of our major fires this year occurred in my district. So this is one of the most important subjects of our legislative session, to try to be prepared for the next fire season. We had been seeing increasing wildfires for a number of years, but this last fire season really made an impression on us, I think, largely because several of those fires just got out of control.
The 2020 wildfire season was the worst on record. More than 625,000 acres burned, more than 1,000 fires. It's not if, it's when. When will that next wildfire hit us? Every person in this state was impacted by the plumes of smoke, by the change in our air quality, and for those of us living in the mountains, that kind of day-to-day trepidation, is another wildfire on the front for me and my home and in my neighborhood. We have to be thinking in the short term, midterm, and long term. So in the short term, what can I do to make sure this next summer is a safer one? How can we prepare the state, whether that be with mitigation efforts, where can we reduce the hazardous fuels that are accumulating in our forests? What can we do to restore our watersheds that have been so heavily damaged by wildfire? And then how can I expand and strengthen our wildfire response? And if that is through technology and new tools in the toolkit, like aviation resources, or just training firefighters and making sure they are ready, boots on the ground, to get out there and tackle a fire, it doesn't mean we can ignore that mid and long-term challenge around climate change. So I hope that my colleagues and I will have the opportunity to make those investments in the right way, to ensure that Coloradans are taken care of and that we protect our great state.
Wildfires impact everybody, from mountain communities to wildland-urban interface, and even in cities. Wildfires are changing how we live.
My name is Shelley Olson, and I'm the Assistant Fire Chief at Grand Fire Protection District No. 1 here in Granby, Colorado. Every year we get more and more calls. Wildland fires have been on the rise. Most of the fires in Grand County that are put out, it's when you have those large ones that just escape your capabilities and your resources, and they just grow exponentially, and we call that a mega fire when it's over 100,000 acres, and we have never seen that in Grand County. Firefighting aircraft is a great tool. It can only be used in certain circumstances if everything is lined up. If the weather and the wind. It's not the end-all be-all. You can't just drop retardant and say the fire is out. Retardant just slows the fire down. Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control, with the multi-mission aircraft, an invaluable tool for us to map the perimeter, to look for hot spots.
My name is Jeff Rasmussen. I'm a MSO with the Colorado Multi-Mission Aircraft. I have a background in wildland fire, multiple capacities. I worked on engine crews, hot shots, and smoke jumpers. and I've been here since March of 2019. The general role of firefighting aviation is to support firefighters on the ground and support their efforts. And so whether it be tankers or air attack or an intelligence gathering aircraft like we have here, it's all in support of the effort on the ground to suppress the wildfire. I've definitely witnessed an increase in scale and complexity of wildfires throughout my career, especially in 2020. That was kind of a off-the-charts year with fires like the East Troublesome Fire growing 100,000 acres in one day. That was unheard of when I started 12 years ago. So throughout my career, fires have definitely been gaining in complexity and size. And the complexity part typically comes from the wild-urban interface, where people are moving more into the mountains and into the woods, and that's creating a lot of complexity on these fires. When you're on the ground, intelligence and situational awareness is really everything, right? And so we're able to provide firefighters on the ground with a broader sense of what's going on around them that they would be aware of otherwise. Other firefighting aircraft do participate in suppression. Those are the tankers, the single-engine tankers and the large air tankers and helicopters. They deliver retardant and water on the fire, which suppresses the fire enough for those ground crews to get in there and work. Really all we need is a location and a way to get a hold of who's ever on the ground out there. We'll work with the pilot to determine if the weather is going to be workable in that area and what kind of the conditions are over there and getting there. And so it's a team effort in that sense. There's typically on any fire, there's multiple agencies and jurisdictions involved, and everyone's working towards the same goal.
So I'm Dave Bickerstaff. We're here at Centennial Airport in Centennial, Colorado, and I work for Bodie Aviation. Bodie has a contract with the state of Colorado to provide pilots and maintenance for the airplane behind me. It has a couple different names. This is a Pilatus PC-12 here in Colorado. It's known as the multi-mission aircraft. So the job for me specifically as a pilot is to be here at the airport on shift for a 10-hour shift. And essentially, if the Division of Fire Prevention and Control gets a mission, then they'll come in, let me know, and I'm responsible for pre-flighting the airplane, building a flight plan, and then flying the crew where they need to go. So it's single pilot operations, do all the coordination, working with air traffic control. Get pretty good at changes on the fly, because almost every time we take off, the plan changes and whatever we filed is not what we fly, and it's kind of fun working with Denver, and they're really fantastic. Shout out to the Denver Center controllers, everybody who's really patient and flexible working with us to get where we need to go. We could be just about anywhere in the state in an hour, and we have about 6.5 hours of loiter time, depending on how close our nearest airport is, that we can divert to. So the aerial firefighting ops is definitely a symphony in terms of how it's orchestrated and coordinated. It's pretty neat to see it from above, and there's been a couple of fires where we've watched, and there's a lead plane, there's the air attack pilot leading around a couple of large tankers, and then there's like a couple of seats zipping in and out, and some helicopters. So it's really neat to see how that is orchestrated. There's a lot of disparate groups that come together to make it happen from all over the country, even the world. But ultimately, everyone has the same focus, which is trying to protect lives and property, minimize the damage, and get the fires under control when they're not, if we can.
For firefighting teams, air resources are tools in the toolbox. From large air tankers to helicopters and single-engine planes, each aircraft has a unique capability. With high maneuverability, single-engine air tankers, or seats, are a class of aircraft that can zip in and out of firefighting incidents with precision, and when used properly, with great effectiveness.
So CalFire Aviation is single-engine air tankers based on the Air Tractor 802. And when Chris Doyle and I formed CalFire Aviation, we put a little different focus on how we were going to go about it, and that we wanted to put together the safest, best performing single-engine air tanker out there that we possibly could. Being that we were going to be based in Colorado and knew that we could be fighting fires, as high as 11,000, 12,000 feet, you need that performance to be able to get to the fire, to be able to maneuver on the fire, and efficiently get back to the airport for another load and back to the fire. Typically, we can point the nose at a fire and climb right up to wherever that fire's at and go to work, where in the past, seats have not had that kind of horsepower, and they maybe had to circle around climbing up to altitude further out, taking more time to get to the fire to respond. There's a lot more fires than what they hear about, because they only hear about the big ones that make the news. And a lot of times we catch these fires small, we help the guys on the ground, and they're able to contain that, and it becomes a non-event. And so nobody ever really knows about it. But there's a lot more fires than what people know, and we catch a lot of them before they get big and get a big name. So it is fun and satisfying when you can go out and help those guys on the ground and save structures or contain a fire. It's also frustrating when you can't go because it's too windy, or you do go and what you do isn't effective enough and they still lose the fire or lose a structure. You get the full roller coaster of emotions throughout the season.
For firefighting teams and those affected directly by the fires, the impacts are drastic and the lessons are profound.
I'm Ernie Bjorkman. I've been a news journalist for probably 40 years.
Channel 2's 9 o'clock news. There was excitement in town. Before you call us.
Retired 2 years ago, came up to a beautiful place called Grand Lake, Colorado. Been coming up here since the 80s part-time, and I'd like to give back to the town. So I ran for office, I won, and so I'm now one of 7 town trustees. You got Grand Lake, which is Colorado's deepest and biggest natural lake. You have a lot of boating in the summer, you have a lot of paddle boarding, you have a lot of sports and water recreation. Then of course October came along and we kept watching the fire down by Kremlin, moving up to Granby, and then the night of October 21st it hit here.
The East Troublesome would start on October 14th. It was a fire that started in Kremlin, near Kremlin, on the west side of our county, and really traveled miles and miles very, very quickly, over 100,000 acres in one evening. No one in the incident management team had ever seen something like that and have it move that quickly. Things aligned and created this, firestorm that we saw on October 21st. It had direct sunlight, temperatures were higher, the relative humidity was very low, the winds were very, very strong. We ended up unfortunately losing 366 homes, but we saved a lot. So, that's a big number. It could have been much worse.
We kept seeing smoke to the south of us, down by Granby, Kremlin. And then, we kept saying, oh, that's a shame. It's large billowing smoke. And so far, there wasn't any destruction. It was just mostly back in the woods. But we knew, because of all the beetle kill up here, that it was just a matter of time that thing was going to spread. This whole sky was kind of orange smoke. We knew that there was no stopping it. We heard that the fire department was starting a pre-evacuation on the west side of 34, which is the main highway that comes into Grand Lake. And we said, no big deal, it's pre-evacuation. Well, little did we realize, and a lot of firefighters didn't realize, that first of all, we had 60-mile-an-hour winds. And then within the fire itself, it was creating a 200-mile-an-hour mini weather system itself. So that thing spread about 16, 17 miles in a matter of hours. And so by 7 o'clock that night, my wife and I are sitting watching TV, having a glass of wine, and suddenly we hear there's a mandatory evacuation. Luckily, we had gotten some things together, some important papers, because we said, you know what, you never know. The lights started flickering in our house, and the firefighters were coming by with bullhorns saying, get out immediately. So we had basically 10 minutes to get out. We live on one end of Main Street, so driving out, it was like a thick fog of smoke. Maybe 5 feet in front of you is all you could see. Burning embers all around us. And I kept looking at all these old buildings, and I said, oh my God, this whole town is going to go up. But the nice relief was firefighters from numerous agencies had lined this street. They were like soldiers ready to take on the enemy. When we left town, I said, we don't know if we're going to come back to a town or not. If it wasn't for those firefighters, this place would have burned, because any of those embers could have hit one of these wooden porches and put the whole town on fire. I firmly believe that the aerial firefighters really stopped the spread until they couldn't fly anymore on that day, and that's the day that really affected us and had to evacuate out of town.
I know at my house, I ended up losing a house in Grand Lake, and at 3,000 some degrees, you know, everything just turns to dust, and that's really what happened. It was so incredibly hot. Grand County has never had to go through something like this.
With fire seasons intensifying each year, new approaches are advancing firefighting teams' abilities to fight fires. One of these methods used is infrared camera technology to map, track, and even predict what a fire will do next. Now, we'll hear from Camille Calabeo to learn exactly how.
How do infrared cameras work? We use infrared cameras to detect and fight fires, but how do they work and why infrared? First, let's talk about what infrared actually is. We can't see infrared with our own eyes, but we can see it with special infrared cameras that we use for a variety of things, including detecting and fighting fires. Instead of taking a visual image of an object or area of interest, infrared cameras take a thermal image by measuring the temperature of each pixel in the image. We can then apply a color scheme to these temperature readings to visualize hotter and colder parts of the image. We use infrared cameras for firefighting in many ways. We can monitor rising temperature spots to detect where a fire might start before it ignites. We can also take temperature readings of a fire that is already burning to help firefighters make informed decisions about where to target their firefighting activities. Infrared cameras have changed the way we detect and fight fires because they allow us to monitor the fire even with a thick smoke cover that limits our ability to see the flames with our own eyes. Infrared cameras are placed on board firefighting planes and helicopters, but they are also used on satellites to provide even more data to firefighters and local officials.
From satellite cameras to Colorado's own Pilatus PC-12 multi-mission aircraft, infrared technology is empowering ground crews from the sky like never before.
My name is Andrea Drinkhouse, and I'm one of the MSOs that we have here, which is the mission sensor operators that ride in the back of the plane and do the fire mapping or tactical infrared or anything they needed from us back there. So we use the camera, move the camera around to see what's below the plane. When there's tons of smoke, especially it seems like this last year, it happened more than it did the previous year, probably because the fires were so much bigger this last year. But with all of that smoke, normally you would have like air attack platform flying around, or you'd have helicopters flying around, and they could give ground crews situational awareness about what's happening. But with all that smoke, they couldn't see anything and they were all grounded. But we were still able to be up flying through the smoke and the clouds, and we were usually above the smoke, but we could look down with our infrared camera and we could scan around and we could see where all the fire was. We could see where the heat or spots were with the infrared. It was a hotshot crew member who was our ground contact. We told him it's right along, you know, this berm area. We think we see like a dozer right here on this edge part, so lat long plus just a description of where it was. So he takes off on his quad, goes over to wherever it is. We continue on our flight path because we're still, again, looping up and down to any other spots we find. And he called back on the radio and he was like, yeah, I found the spot. It's 1 inch by 3 inches in a dozer berm. I don't know how he found that. At one point we were just writing down like a list of lat longs, and like every time we hit like 3 or 4, we would call down to our ground contact. Goal of the program is to do detection where we're flying, and we try to find fires when they're really small.
When I was on the ground as an engine boss and running an engine crew, this data wasn't even present. I mean, this wasn't something that we had access to. It was definitely not real-time data or near real-time data, and that's probably the biggest leap we've made with this platform, is that it is near real-time data. I mean, the biggest thing is just the increasing need for more bandwidth for data connectivity. As a ground crew member at some point in time, I'm going to be able to just pick up my iPhone or my Android device or whatever I'm using for a smartphone and just hit a couple buttons on an app and instantly have that data in real time. The air resources, they are expensive, but you have to weigh the cost of that expensive resource with the overall cost of fighting a very large fire that gets completely out of hand.
Large scale, we really need to do more. We are definitely still in recovery mode, which is a tricky place to be when you're looking at the next season of fire. And having gone through it now, even more so important, because yes, it can happen to us.
Wildfires continue to grow in frequency, intensity, and complexity. And at the same time, new applications of aviation resources, investments in infrastructure, and innovations in technology are providing aviation firefighting teams with new ways to approach these major challenges. Wildfires are not going away anytime soon, and in part 2, we'll explore how these new technologies may shape the future of aviation firefighting. This program was made possible by Wings Over the Rockies, educating and inspiring all people about aviation and space endeavors of the past, present, and the future. Hi, I'm Sean Sederberg, and this is Behind the Wings. In this episode, we'll take a look at the innovations in aviation firefighting.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Wildfires have been increasing in frequency, intensity, and complexity all across the western United States and around the world. When the fire does new things, firefighting teams have to do new things too.
Anyone can start a fire and never even know it.
CalFire in California is one of the largest fire agencies in the world, with more than 60 aircraft and growing.
But every year we start forest fires.
Black Hawk helicopters are converted into Firehawks. Critical data is streamed live between aerial and ground crews, and night vision goggles allow pilots to fight fires from the sky at night. It's time to go behind the wings. While 2020 was unprecedented, wildfires have been intensifying for years. California aviation firefighters provide one of the best examples of how aviation programs can develop in response to the increasing fires.
My name is Stu Sprung, and I'm the Chief of Flight Operations for CalFire. So this is the CalFire aviation program. We are the largest aerial firefighting fleet in the world. We provide aerial fire protection for the state of California and the 40 million citizens that are in it. Right now we're at about 60 aircraft that we staff throughout 22 bases throughout the state. And the mandate for those aircraft is to quickly respond. We respond them like we respond fire engines out of fire stations. Within 5 minutes, we try to get in them and out the door. We respond to those fires in our responsibility area within 20 minutes and keep 95% of them under 10 acres. Fire seasons used to be about 4 months, and that was accepted for many, many years in the fire service. And in the past several years, it's become more of a year-round experience for us. Our fleet certainly has expanded because of those increased needs. Anyone flying in an airline over the state can look down in the forest and see big swaths of dead trees. And really those just turn into kindling that just, if there's a fire or happens to be something nearby, they just go up instantly. So we have a lot of forests, we have a lot of trees, but we also have people that reside in those areas, right, and have homes and whatnot. All we can really do is saying, okay, the threat has changed. We have to grow with it and adapt to it. We're making the biggest jumps we can with the available equipment.
My name's Chief Benjamin Berman. I am the helicopter program manager for CalFire. There's definitely a demand signal for an aviation fleet of this size and expanding. About ready to onboard 7 brand new C-130s. We have 12 CalFire Hawks, S-70i CalFire Hawks. I think we've gone through unprecedented change in the last, I would say, 24 to 36 months on the rotary wing side. going from a Type 2, we call it, which is the Huey, to a Type 1, which is the CalFire Hawk. Multi-engine, multi-system, lots of redundancy, twice as heavy, twice as large helicopter. We're definitely seeing more of a challenge, but I know that CalFire and our interagency partners, we're definitely stepping up to that challenge. 95% at 10 acres, you know, those don't typically make the headlines, and that's something that is being done in the background.
With our aircraft in coordination with the ground crews, we get it done. It's that 5% that we can't catch, that's too big for us. That's when we rely heavily on contract aircraft. We have hundreds of operators and hundreds of helicopters and airplanes that we have available to bring in and help us with that. There is never enough resources, there's never enough data, there's never enough people to mitigate these where we'd like to. Obviously we wouldn't have the season like we did last year where we burned 4 million acres, where the worst season before that was 2 million, right? So in 1 year we doubled what our worst season was before. Our program's about 50 years old, and each of those years has provided us with education of how to improve our program the next, and continues to.
Events today are much more complex than they ever used to be. Decisions that we used to have hours or even days to make sometimes are now having to be made in minutes. The better information they have, the better decisions they're able to make faster. We take data from different areas and different types of sources and information and pipe it into a super simple firefighter-friendly tool. It is entirely common now, especially with the size and scope of many of the wildfires that we have in the western United States, for any given one of them to have crews coming from dozens of states in the United States and internationally. And to be able to make it simple for those crews to see things is really the heart and soul of what we try to do at Intera. Started doing things with technology and imaging and being able to see things, fire perimeters and hyperspectral imaging, things we'd never been able to do before, and provide intelligence to the fire service that we'd never really had. The big joke that most of them will tell you is that there's 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. I mean, we literally used to take an airplane up with a video camera and take a picture of the fire, and then you'd have to land and go take that videotape in and do something with it, and then those pictures, physical pictures, would end up back at the incident command tent 10, 12, sometimes 24 hours later. But the fire's no longer there, and so the intelligence wasn't as good as it could have been. We take that data in real time, take it right off the aircraft as it's flying, and put it in the hands of the firefighters on the ground. It's one thing to have data in a spreadsheet. It's another thing to be able to understand what the data on the spreadsheet is telling you. So that's really what our engineers and our GIS people are really good at doing.
My name is Tom Eldar. I'm a software engineer at Intera. We take data and we present it in a much more user-friendly way. So what happens whenever a plane takes off to go to fight fires, take pictures, things like that? The moment it takes off, we get notice of it. We have a mission created on our end, and if they have a live video feed, they're able to open up the mission and see, oh hey, here's the live feed from that aircraft.
The firefighting industry has really glommed on to the technological advancements that have happened in this field. With a modernizing field, a lot of different technologies come into play. And as soon as you get all those different technologies working together, information turns into intelligence. If a fire chief shows up to a 1,000-acre fire, draws a polygon, and he can immediately notify the entire crew on the ground where the fire is at this point in time. When we put data on the map, we have to tell a story. And the story has to help the firefighters make the decisions on the ground that keep their community safe.
We have come leaps and bounds in just the last few years of being able to get information in near real time or real time into the hands of people who have to make decisions. And the reality is that we can do things today that we couldn't do even just a few years ago.
The firefighting industry is changing every day. New technologies provide new opportunities to both air and ground crews. Critically, fires don't stop burning at night. Agencies around the country are experimenting with night vision technology to enable them to fly at night. In Colorado, CalFire Aviation is leading the way with fixed-wing night vision firefighting.
Currently, there's really very little firefighting activity when the sun goes down. Now, sun goes down, we come home, get up the next morning, the sun comes up, we fight the fire. The fire doesn't quit at night. Now, we don't have to quit at night because of the night vision goggle technology. I first personally started flying with NVGs in 1982 in the Army in helicopters. And now it has kind of progressed into the fixed wing world with crop dusting, for example. The technology is there, it's been there, and it continues to refine. So we've got this highly technical apparatus here. This is just a standard light fixture, and we got a 7.5 watt bulb in here. So we make a little aperture, and what this does is simulate moonlight conditions. I'll show you the helmet setup and what we do. So the helmet has a power source. I can either power this side or this side, so that gives me redundancy. Essentially self-contained on the helmet. So the night vision goggle technology, you know, it goes back several years. So we're leveraging the equipment. We're also leveraging the experience that we have, and now we're putting that into the ability to fight fires at night. Well, in the evening and the nighttime, you have less humidity. You actually have probably better aircraft performance because it's cooler generally, and you have less wind. We could take advantage of those situations by flying at night, you know, having continuous coverage on the fire. We're on the 4th year of actually starting to do this. So we initiated in 2017, it was actually with the Oregon Department of Forestry. We would like to look into this. We know the technology's out there. We'd like to look into this. Would you be interested, CalFire? And CalFire said, yeah. We modified one of the airplanes because the cockpit needs to be modified to NVG compatibility. And so that's where we started in 2017, taking a look, putting a pilot in the airplane, flying it around. Can we do this? Can we safely drop retardant at night? Yes. Can we do it effectively? Yes. We are the first that is applying night vision goggle technology in fixed wing operations in night aerial firefighting, specifically the single engine air tankers. Now I'm looking through the goggles, but you can see I'm looking underneath. So the design of them, I'm looking underneath at the instrument panel, but outside I'm looking through the goggles. And it's very important for the cockpit to be what we call NVG compatible. So they're not having an influence on the goggles. That's why you see a lot there in the green light, because that is a spectrum of light that don't affect the goggles. And so they magnify the light.
For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Zachary Sullivan. I work for CalFire. I'm one of the pilots. I'm not one of the night vision pilots, so that's why I'm out here on the ground. So we run nine airplanes. One in Oregon's the only fixed wing aircraft out there on a night contract. We did it last year and they're gonna stand it up again this year. That kind of is the brainchild behind it. Basically what we wanted to do is invite everyone out, see what we're doing with it. First thing is I'd love any of your guys' feedback, like Sullivan, this just don't work. Or Sullivan, this, clean this up, or this is a good idea. So we know how to improve our program. And hopefully someday we'll start to see this technology put to use throughout either this state or neighboring states. We think it's coming, so we just want to make sure we have the best way of doing it out there. So the first airplane's taken off at 8:40, so that gives us about 20 minutes to get out there. The first drop will probably be coming at 8:50. So we'll have a little bit of daylight and then the rest will all be at dark. It's a brand new concept. Literally, the first place it's ever been done is in California with a couple of county agency helicopters. And that's been going on for about 3 years consistently. We stood up the airplane in Oregon last year for the first time, and we're the first fixed wing operator to ever do that. So it's brand new technology being implemented, and these things take time. It's we've taken the philosophy of a crawl, walk, run type of thing, and it just, implementation, you want to make sure it's done the right way. It's different because our target altitude is 60 to 80 feet from the fuel source. So again, that's not like a 747 that's flying at 30,000 feet. It's a little bit closer, so. There's always limitations. We can't just go out and fly through every amount of smoke in every situation, but it does give us, again, another advantage that we don't always have during the daytime. Another misconception is, wow, can you see power lines, cell towers, all these things out there that could cause an accident? You can see them better at night than you can during the day. It just, everything is so much better to see at night. So you've got a home, the fire's coming towards it. It's 8:52 p.m., which we have to be on the ground. With this technology, we can go a couple hours past that and go out and we can paint those houses. So maybe that will help save those houses where otherwise we can't fly. There's no chance, right? You know, we're seeing things that we've never seen before. Well, that's why we brought this out, is it's time, you know, if the fire's gonna do things we are not used to, it's time to bring in ways to attack that fire that we're not used to, and this is one of those things.
While CalFire is leading the way with fixed-wing night vision goggle firefighting, helicopters are also an incredibly versatile tool in the aviation firefighting toolkit. Based on the famous Sikorsky Blackhawk, the Firehawk helicopter is modified to be one of the most capable firefighting aircraft available today.
My name is Eric Lama. I'm the Firehawk Program Manager here at United Rotorcraft. I'm in charge of all the current and future ongoing Firehawk programs that we have here at the facility. The Firehawk is, you know, a multi-mission helicopter, right? It has the capability of dropping and inserting firefighters, you know, either at the front line or even at a fire break where they're dropping people off to go through and actually start to prepare the fire break. So what the Firehawk will do for the most part is they will transport the firemen and all their equipment out, drop them off, and then the aircraft will lift off and then go out and actually start taking on water, and then coming back and then work in conjunction with the firefighters on the ground, either to suppress the fire that's there or support them just in case something were to pop up where the firefighters needed to be, you know, removed from the area quickly.
Just watching what our customers are able to do with this. We have San Diego Fire, LA County Fire, who really helped drive the design of this. Now CalFire, Colorado. I mean, we're just really excited to see this platform entering into the market and doing what it's doing. LA County realized that the Huey just could not keep up pace with the increasing fires, with the fire intensity, but the technology just has advanced so much from the 1950s. And it was during those early designs, we're sketching, you know, designs on the back of on a napkin, and Denton says, you know, my son's got this monster truck. And if we took that design of the monster truck and we, you know, jacked up the struts like that, we could do the same with the Blackhawk. That napkin and that monster truck idea is what drove the design of the Firehawk.
The aircraft has a 1,000-gallon water tank on it. And what that 1,000-gallon water tank brings is it allows the pilot or the crew to actually meter that water out of the tank itself. It can take on a minimum of 200 all the way up to the 1,000 gallons, and then actually use that and spread that out to help spread, you know, a fire line. So this is the 1,000-gallon water tank. This is obviously mounted under the belly of the aircraft. This is the snorkel, 10-foot extendable and retractable snorkel here. The steps on the right-hand side of the aircraft for the crew to get in and out of the airframe. I can't think of a better testament than giving the Blackhawk to a group of 18, 19, 21-year-olds that are in the military and allowing them to basically go out and just use that aircraft and abuse that aircraft, and it comes back every day wanting more. It's on the ramp, it's ready to go the next morning. It's able to withstand a multitude of, I don't want to say abuse, but tough wear. Some of the other operators have commercial aircraft. They're not built as robust as what the Blackhawk is. That's what gives this Firehawk the capability to be able to go out there and land in rugged areas and to be able to do the mission that it does today. So, you know, we have a multitude of different customers' aircraft in the hangar, and they do customize some of the different things, right? Different radios, different things along, different equipment that they use specifically in their counties or their fire departments to help them communicate with their, you know, their individual bases or the local police departments there. But the main thing for the Firehawk is obviously the high gear, right? We take the main landing gear off of the aircraft.
We jack the aircraft up. We basically put a 20-inch extension there with the torque box, allowing the aircraft to be jacked up to be able to handle that 1,000-gallon water tank. And what the tank has is it has a 10-foot snorkel that's extended and retracted from the cockpit to allow them to fill that tank. The pump will actually suck 1,000 gallons of water into that tank in under a minute. They get the water as close as they can to those fires so that they don't have to make a bunch of trips back and forth. The tank itself has a 45-gallon foam tank mounted to the back of it that's also controlled via the cockpit, allowing the pilots to inject firefighting foam coming from Sikorsky. It has the stroke attenuating seats for the crew to allow for crash impacts, so that the seats will absorb the impact. We've gotten it down to a point where we can paint that aircraft and have it completely modified in 8 months. The longer they sit here, they're not out fighting fires. They're not dropping firefighters into the hills. They're not out dropping water.
50% of all fires can be eliminated if they're put out within the first 20 to 30 minutes before they have a chance to grow into this big fire. And if you talk to LA County, they're going to say the Black Hawk, basically, that is the only aircraft that give you that performance capability and allow you to fly in areas that no other helicopters can.
Helicopters like the Firehawk are undoubtedly valuable tools for aviation firefighting teams. But how do helicopters fly? Next, we'll hear from Camille Calabello to find out exactly how helicopters take to the skies.
How do helicopters fly? Helicopters are very versatile aircraft. They can take off and land vertically, and they can hover, making them ideal for a variety of missions, including firefighting and search and rescue. But how do they work? Helicopters stay in the air thanks to their rotor blades, which work similarly to airplane wings. Both forms of aircraft generate lift when large amounts of air move over the wings or rotor blades very fast. When airplanes fly through the air travels around the wing to produce lift. When helicopters fly, the air travels around the quickly spinning rotor blades to produce lift. When rotor blades are spinning very fast, the body of the helicopter wants to spin in the opposite direction because of Newton's third law. To counteract this, most helicopters use another set of blades mounted sideways on the tail called a tail rotor. The tail rotor pushes the tail in the opposite direction of the torque induced by the main rotor, so the helicopter can fly in a straight line or maintain a stable hover. Lastly, helicopters control their movement by changing the angle and/or speed of the rotors. Helicopters' ability to navigate at slow speeds and even hover make them a critical piece of the aviation firefighting toolkit.
Wow, the technology used in aviation firefighting is super impressive, but it does come with a cost. As states and agencies consider greater investments in aviation firefighting, it's important to look at both the costs and the benefits.
The cost that's associated with, for instance, DFPC's Firehawk, the S70i that they're going to buy. You look at the initial cost, once it's all said and done, outfitted, they're paying $24 million plus just to get that aircraft out the door, equipped and ready to go. Then you start looking at maintenance. Are they hiring within, or are they going to do, you look at CalFire, they hired within. But it's a multi-billion-dollar operation a year for maintenance. If you're looking at a rotor aircraft, you have 1 million plus parts that are trying to get away from itself. Helicopters are probably the most maintenance-intensive part of what we do, firefighting, versus our fixed wing.
As we go through that life cycle of an aircraft acquisition, there's definitely lessons that we learn almost on a daily basis. We're utilizing infrared, we're utilizing real-time mapping, we're utilizing a lot of these different technologies to help us with better understanding of what tools to employ.
We have an acronym that we talk about, C. It's got to be safe, effective, and efficient. And this aircraft fits all those requirements. It's safe because it's got 2 engines. It's effective if we use it right, it's the right tool, and we're learning that. We take all that information, we mold it to our model that CalFire uses, what other states might use from Washington to Arizona or Colorado. I'm sure they'll be looking at us, watching us, what we do, and they'll go, oh, that's probably a model that we may set up for them to follow in our footsteps.
At the end of the day, right, we had to make our own evaluation and look at what was going on out there. Everyone was like, These are game changers. They make a huge difference, and put out just one and suddenly the Firehawk is well worth every penny. Colorado's in a place. Now is the moment. We need to make these investments so that we are ready and we can protect Colorado's future.
Really excited about the progress Colorado is going to make thanks to the bill we'll be signing today and our legislators who are here today in being able to fight forest fires and hit them hard early.
You know, we had the conversation, is it worth the $24 million investment to bring a Firehawk to this state? And I think we were convinced by the evidence we see in California. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the next few years we're purchasing another Firehawk because we see such a dramatic improvement in our ability to respond early to wildfires.
Obviously from the fire season that we had last year, that brought a lot of attention to the Firehawk and to other firefighting apparatus capabilities within the state. And I mean, we had 2 of the largest forest fires in Colorado history last year. Had it not been as bad as it was that last year, it may not have gone through as quickly. It shows, that the legislators of Colorado are dedicated to its citizens. The future is kind of unlimited, right? I mean, it's kind of the old saying, right? If you can dream it, it can be done.
Reducing CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas emissions is something that needs to happen. There is hope. This is not inevitable. When you can literally see, some of the effect in the sky, it has an impact. But I think a lot of us are also in this field are hopeful because we know that it is possible to change this trajectory.
Lightning is still going to strike in unknown places. But I think the effectiveness of what we're learning here and what we're doing can be measured. So I hope 5 years from now we have some data that says, look what we've done. Look how many lives we've saved. Look how many structures we've saved. Look how many fires we got put out in the first 24 hours, let's say, before they spread.
Firefighting is not going away. But how we do it, and how effectively we do it, and how safely we're able to do it, is going to continue to change.
Wildfires won't stop burning, and aviation teams are pushing forward with new techniques to face the challenge. Today's aircraft are capable of delivering heavier loads at faster speeds with even more informed strategy. All of these tools will play a role in the next chapter of aviation firefighting.